Hello people, and welcome to Crypto Exposed. Okay guys, got a post here from Hedera, and they say, @IO Builders is transforming how institutions engage with digital assets through comprehensive, regulation-compliant platforms. Product engineer Miguel Gomez and software developer Alberto Molina explore how IO Builders is driving innovation on the Hedera network. Okay guys, so we've got a quick interview here with Alberto Molina and Miguel Gomez, and I'm just going to quickly go through the highlights of this for you. So they just talked about, first and foremost, the two highlights as to why they like using the Hedera platform. And the two things that they said, one was the fixed fees, which again, like I've said this before, it might sound like simplistic, but you've got to understand, if you've ever used the Ethereum network, you will understand why fixed fees, and the fact that it's just in USD as well, why it's so convenient. And that's because I've had a point where it was in a bull run, right? And Ethereum was at its, thriving, like really doing well. So in the 2021 bull run, like Ethereum was, hitting all-time highs, and everybody was using it because there was NFTs going on and stuff like that, and DeFi was going around. So it was thriving. The problem with that is, because the network was doing better, the fees were higher. And it also led to a lot of congestion. So I'll give you a prime example of this. There was a point when an NFT came out called Bored Apes. And this took the crypto space by storm. Bored Apes did really well in the beginning. And people was wanting to mint these NFTs. And so there was a date where there was like, okay, at this time we're going to allow you all to come and try and mint your NFTs to get a Bored Ape, etc. And I saw someone, after it had all, happened, I saw someone on X or Twitter at the time say they spent, I think they said $3,000, and they didn't even get the NFT minted. So they never even got the actual NFT in the end anyway. So basically what happened was the network was so congested at the time with everybody trying to mint the NFTs as soon as it became open and available, that they kept trying to put it through, and there was basically having the network fail. But you've got to understand that every time you pay the gas fee, you pay the gas fee before you put it through. And so if it fails, you've still lost the Ethereum that you used to try and do the mint, right? So it's not nice, right? Like this guy was gutted, like, $3,000. Imagine that down the drain. So this is a thing where, in terms of Hedera, it doesn't matter how busy the network is. And first and foremost, just before we even get into that, Hedera won't have the same type of issues because Hedera can scale. Ethereum can't really scale. So that's another thing in of itself. But Hedera won't have that problem where if HBAR goes up exponentially, the price of the fees doesn't go up with it, right? The fees stay the same. The fees are always going to be the fixed price. And also the fact that it's in dollars. The reason why that helps is because you've not got to try and keep trying to think about, okay, it's in this currency, it's in that currency, or it's in the actual cryptocurrency, because that's the biggest thing. Again, like if it's in the cryptocurrency, you've got to understand the value of that's going to change with how high or low the price goes, right? So, if you say, okay, it's going to cost, let's just say 0.1 ETH to do a gas transfer. Well, that 0.1 ETH at one point could be worth, let's just say $50, for example, just as an example off the top of my head. But then, later on down the line, it could be $100 to $200, or it could be, $5 if you go into like a bear market, for example. So, you've got to understand that like the fees just being predictable, especially from a business perspective, because let's say you was a business and you was forecasting doing certain things for the company, right? And you're saying, okay, well, we're going to have to do this, we're going to have to do this, we're going to have to do this. If you know exactly how much the fees are and that doesn't change, you can literally forecast how much it's going to cost you to do all the things that you need to do. So if you say for a year, like it could be, give or take, we need to do, for example, 100 smart contract executions, right? You can plan what that's going to cost because you know the fee and it's fixed. But even if you say, okay, look, it could end up going a bit more than 100, it could be 110, or it could be like 95, for example. So yeah, that's give or take in that regard. But what I'm saying is, in terms of you figuring out the fees, you know exactly what you're dealing with. You know the ballpark figure. Whereas if you was dealing with it in the cryptocurrency of ETH, for example, well, if you happen to be doing some of this during a bull run, it could be that, you know, that thing that could cost, let's say, like $5 to do at the current time. Let's say you do that in a bull run, it could be that that goes up to $50, right? Or it could be that, you know, you go into a bear market and then it's like, you know, $1, right? But the problem with it is the fluctuations, right? You can't really account for how much it's going to cost because you just don't know when you're going to be doing these transactions and you don't know what the price is going to be at that time. You'll never know that. So it makes it hard to calculate. So the price being fixed and just fixed to the US dollar, there's no chance of it changing, and it's that set price all the time. So again, it's just making sure there's that consistency, that you know exactly what you're paying for. I 100% think, like, for a lot of companies, this is something that they're going to want. And this is what I've said before when it comes to Ethereum. And I know I keep using Ethereum, but the reason why I use Ethereum is because I do think Hedera is the better version of Ethereum. You know, like, I do think Ethereum's days are numbered, to be honest with you, because Hedera can do everything that Ethereum can do, but better. So I really do think Hedera will surpass Ethereum over time. And yeah, like, I just look at this and I just think it's a way better option for companies, a way better position for them to be able to forecast their business expenses. And would you not want that? I would say so. Okay, so moving on to the second thing here. The second thing was the finality. And, you know, Alberto even used Ethereum as an example here. And this is what I mean. Like, we talk about Ethereum because I think really that's who Hedera is in competition with, to be honest with you. And they're saying, like, you know, with Ethereum, it can take minutes or longer to you know, get finality on the network. I think he said just minutes, but I'll be honest with you, I've done a transfer on Ethereum. Again, this was back when the bull run was going on in full effect. I did a transaction and it took about 2 hours for it to go through. So it definitely can be longer because I've experienced it myself. And so, you know, with Hedera, the finality is in seconds. And then that's not just talking about, you know, just doing the messaging aspect of it. Like, that's the actual settlement of the transaction is done. Everything's finished. So, like, at the end of the day, once again, when you think about it from that perspective, Ethereum can't compete with that, right? Like, Hedera will give you a fixed fee that Ethereum can't do, and it will also give you instant finality, which Ethereum can't do. And again, like, when I do look at Ethereum, not to sound like a broken record, but I'm someone who's used Ethereum, so I'm actually talking from experience here, because let me be clear, like, I'm not like anti-Ethereum. Like, I don't hate Ethereum or anything like that. It's just a cryptocurrency. I've used it. Like, I've got some projects that are layer 2s that are on Ethereum, but I've had my experience with it, and I'm just being neutral here when I say I've utilized Hedera and I've utilized Ethereum, and I very much prefer Hedera, right? Like, I actually still hold some Ethereum, but in all honesty, it's not from an investment perspective. It's for gas for the layer 2s that I have on Ethereum. But as an actual network, it's not fun to be on, to be honest with you. Like, I've experienced it, like, and in the last bull run, it was an absolute nightmare. Like, I'll literally tell you how bad it was. In Ethereum, you have something called GUI, and that's what like the gas is, right? And the GUI will kind of give you an idea of when it's like more expensive to do a transaction on the network or when it's cheaper. And so what I was having to do, I was literally having to put an alarm on. So I'd wake up early in the morning, like say like 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, just to execute a transaction on the network. So it'd be dramatically cheaper than doing it in the day, because that's how busy it would be in the day. So I'd do it in these early hours when a lot of people are asleep, and then it would dramatically drop the price. But do you really think I enjoyed having to do that? No. Now, on the Hedera network, you're not going to have that. You do it whenever you want. One, you're not going to really have congestion, so you're not going to worry about doing the actual transaction and it failing, which is, that in itself is heartbreaking when you've paid money and just lost it and you've not even got the actual transaction done. It's hard enough just paying it to actually get the transaction done, but if it fails as well and then you've just not done anything and you have to pay again, obviously that's not fun. And then, like having to get up in the morning. No, I don't want to do that. I want to be able to do it whenever I want, and I want it to be like a predictable amount of money that it's going to cost. You know, I've lost a lot of money just on gas fees through Ethereum, and that's just not, it's not feasible. So this is why, for me, I've said it before, but I do think Ethereum days are numbered. I don't think it's going to stick around. Like, I'm not saying it won't have a place at all, like it could, but I just don't think it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be as wanted. Like, you know, I look at it like mobile phones, you know, like you think about Nokia, you think about BlackBerry, they all had their time at one point, but they're not really around now. Like, you might have the odd phone that they still make and the odd thing that they do, but, you know, you've got Android and you've got Apple now. Like, you're in a new era. And that's kind of how I see it with Hedera and Ethereum. Like, Ethereum's here right now and it's got the big user base because it's got the first mover advantage. But, you know, in the long term, I think, who's going to want to stick around to be on Ethereum? Once people actually start looking at these networks and seeing like, okay, this is what these networks can do, and this is what their finality is like, what their TPS is like, their fees, you know, carbon neutral and that kind of stuff. Like, when you start to look at all that and weigh it all up, I can't see how Ethereum will be a preferred choice. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can't see how you'd pick Ethereum over Hedera. The only reason why I think people would pick Ethereum over Hedera at this point is because Ethereum has got the user base. It's got a lot of people already over there, so they've got a big user base already. But I think as time passes on and as people start to look more towards, okay, what's the better performing network, what can I have an easier experience with, a better experience with, I think eventually, you know, they'll flock to Hedera. And we've seen it a few times already. I've covered it on a few occasions where there's been developers who've left like the Polygon network, Ethereum network to come over to Hedera because they've said, yeah, like Hedera is just the better network. So this stuff happens, you know, that's just the way it goes. So I won't be surprised to see this at all. I think that is coming. And so finally, they're just talking about how they're actually speaking with like banks and stuff to try and get them to integrate into Hedera, like to get new services and stuff like that. So these guys are, you know, they're doing big stuff. Like, we're not talking about minor things here. Like, they really are trying to help institutions, companies, like, integrate into Web3, you know, and this is what they're doing. They're trying to show you, like, you know, this is the kind of things that Hedera can bring for you. I'm not surprised about that at all. You know, I'm really not, because again, the technology that, you know, Hedera has, enterprise grade technology, this is what, you know, banks and stuff would want. It can provide a great service for you. So it would make sense to try and get them to, you know, adapt to this new technology, because we're going over to the blockchain, guys. Like, that's just what's going to happen. Like, it's pretty evident to see at this point. If you're still unsure about its future, I just don't know what to tell you, because, you know, you've got the government talking about crypto and stuff now and wanting to utilize it. So the writing's on the wall, guys. We're just about to see it all come to fruition. But yeah, like, I think this is good to see. Like, you know, it's good to see that there are people out here trying to, you know, help companies innovate over to Web3, into the new era. It's good to see, you know, this is something that is currently underway. And it's good to hear the reasoning as to why they do support Hedera, because I do think these are positive things. And I do think these are things that other banks and institutions, etc., would want to come over to Hedera for. You know, I think this is a reason why I do think they will attract a big user base from an elite level. And I've said this before. So, you know, you're seeing this come to pass now, people talking about this, and it's actually happening. So, you know, as I've said before, like, in terms of Ethereum, I think it's just a matter of time, in my opinion. I really don't see Ethereum having, you know, its spot forever. You know, I think its days are numbered, in my opinion. Not to say that it'll completely go away. I don't know about that, but I do think that it will get overtaken. I really do. I think eventually these networks are going to surpass it, because Ethereum's just not, it's not feasible. It's not. So we'll see how things go, but this was a real good update, so I thought I'd share it with you. Thank you very much for watching this. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And hit that bell. Take care.